Sometimes it feels like the sun will never rise, like the birds will never sing again. Believe in a power greater than what you are going through. When you don't know what to do, keep breathing.
That's right. When you don't know what to do, just keep on breathing. From the City of Angels in Los Angeles. Welcome to all my listeners out there in Radio Land. I'm Dave, the Caregiver's Caregiver at caregiverdave.com, along with my lovely co-host, former mayor of a California beach town and best-selling author Debbie Peterson from Brighton Beach. Sounds like a movie, Brighton Beach. You got it right.
Actually, it's Grover Beach, Dave.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think that,
I wish it was Brighton. Maybe I'd like to be there right now.
You got to write a book or do a movie about memoirs from Grover Beach. That'd be a great book. Only the names have been changed to protect the innocent. Well, anyway, we're coming to you live and on demand 24/7 on numerous syndicated podcast networks, 30 different platforms, including iHeartRadio, iTunes, YouTube, Spreaker, SoundCloud, Vimeo, Stitcher Radio. Listen on. In fact, we're proud to be voted #1 caregiver podcast on FeedSpot out of thousands, and #1 caregiver podcast on Player FM out of the top 50. We have an exciting show planned for you today. Embrace your age. Here we're a few old people here talking about this, the highs and the lows. Mr. Flaherty was a New York City advertising madman, creator, innkeeper of a 5-star inn conference center, author of 5 books, grandfather of 4, his 5th book about to come out, is Loving Longevity. He's 89 years old. My gosh, I thought I was old. He's 19 years older than me. And he has a 10-year plan. So he plans on being around either until he's 99 or 100. I'm not sure. We'll ask him.
Absolutely.
But I first want to take this moment to thank my last week's guest, Karen S. Robbins, as she has devoted her life to children as an elementary school teacher, the romper room lady, TV teacher, mother of 4 sons. It's a great show. You got to watch it. I watched some romper room on YouTube after the show, and it just brought me back to my memory as a child. Well, just a reminder, you can watch or listen to that interview and all our interviews on our membership website, caregiverdave.com, or any of our other 30 global networks that I mentioned earlier, like iHeartRadio and iTunes. All right, enough of that. James, welcome to the Caregiver Dave Show. We're so excited to have you on.
Happy to be here.
And I always like to ask my guests just who is James Flaherty and why was he placed on God's green earth?
I think I'm very fortunate. First of all, I was born and raised in Coral Gables, Florida, before air conditioning. and because of my age, compared to you two nice kids, I grew up really on a different planet. We bought the first TV on the block. I was 15 years old when I first.
What year was that?
What?
You have to do the math, but what year was
that? Would have been 1950. 1950.
And Florida was basically undeveloped in the 50s, kind of?
Yeah, and there was no air conditioning. I grew up with no air conditioning in South Florida. People say, you couldn't do that. I said, are you kidding? We were perfectly happy. We thrived. Then I went to the University of Florida and Michigan State University, came to New York, took home $200 a month after taxes, my first job in New York. I couldn't see the bottom of that imaginary ladder, but by the time I was 33, I was in a corner office in New York as a madman. And I was mainly in New York, although I did accept a job once when my children were 9 and 11. I said, pack. And they said, where are we going, Daddy? I said, we're moving to Buenos Aires, Argentina. And we moved there for 4 years and lived in another language and another culture, which is great for them, for me, for everybody. I was creative director of J. Walter Thompson down there. And then came home and jumped off the top of that mountain, which was a very secure mountain for me in my mid-40s, and started a business I knew nothing about. I bought an abandoned stack of stone in the country and created, with my one partner, a country inn conference center, and I worked 70 hours a week for 10 years. And
what city was that in?
In Armenia, New York, which we call anemia or amnesia, but it's this little burg 80 miles due north of Manhattan in the foothills
So
of the
that's where you
British.
live now.
Yes, I still live in the same
What
silly
happened to
town.
the inn?
Yeah, I'm across the street from the inn, although thank you, Jesus, I can't see it. There are 100 trees between me and the
You
inn.
sold it then. It's not yours anymore?
I sold it in 2016. Yeah, I kept it all those years though, but I was the innkeeper. I
Did
was
it do
the
well?
hands-on. I worked 70 hours a week those first 10, 12 years. I've been married 216 times. My friends would call from New York and say, "What are you doing up there, Flaherty? Come back to New York where you belong." And I said, "What are you doing? Talking to the corner deli owner? I have Henry Kissinger this week. And next
Oh,
week,
wow.
the gods of American Express. And after that, the owners of the
Wow.
New York Times." I had marketed it to high-end corporate America.
Yeah.
So it was
How much did a room cost to stay there for a night or
fun.
a weekend? How much was the rate?
Oh, it was very inexpensive compared to what it is now. I ran it as a country inn, a beautiful country inn with wonderful food, and you could come for a weekend, full weekend, anywhere from 6,000 a couple with all meals. And now it's about $600 a night.
Wow.
It's a boutique hotel now with
Mm,
nothing included, maybe breakfast. You know, it's
yeah.
very lovely, very lovely. Not as friendly as it was,
Of
but
course.
hey,
So when did Acapulco come into your radar?
we were looking for a place to get away from winter in New York. So at first, I had a home on top of a mountain in St. Thomas, which was very nice. That was blown away
Wow.
twice by hurricanes. So I said, let's give earthquakes a chance. So we moved to Acapulco, which is earthquake center. Or had them all the time. And we lived in Las Brisas, a very Tony, very, very rich neighborhood of Las
Yeah.
Brisas
Yeah.
of Acapulco for about 8 or 9 years. And I said, I really don't care for the people that much. And I said to my partner, you can have Acapulco. And I left. I
Yeah.
went to London to see one of my children. And I came back and he had gone across around the river to across the bay to old Acapulco and bought one of the great classic old villas, practically in ruins. And we brought it, it took a year to bring it back to life. And we ended up with, I think, the best villa in all of Acapulco. It had been very social, maybe 40, 50 years ahead of that. Everybody in Acapulco came to La Piedra del Elefante because it was well known and beautiful. And it's
How far
still
was that from
beautiful.
Las Brisas?
Well, it was the other side from
It's
Las
next
Brisas. It
door.
was going around all the way around the circle, around the bay to
Mm,
exactly the other side. So we
wow.
looked out and saw all of the Bay of Acapulco, all of Acapulco, the mountains behind it, and the ocean out to the right. We were on our own peninsula with water on three sides. You know, it was very elegant. I liked it a
Wow.
lot.
So how does caregiving come into your life? I mean,
My
our audience
partner,
are burned
I had
out
a
caregivers, and you're going to teach them something.
Yeah, right. I had a wonderful partner, five language international. I said, when we took up our partnership at age 37 and 38, I said, why would you do this? I mean, you've danced at Grace Kelly's balls in Monaco, and I'm a nice middle class workaholic. Do you really want to be in partnership with somebody that, I mean, my favorite quote is from Noel Coward, work is more fun than fun. That's, and I still believe it. And he said, yeah, that'll do. He was everything in the world I can't do, Bob could do perfectly, and vice versa. So as a partnership, it was a fantastic partnership. It really was. People said, how can you possibly, you two live under one roof? We were so wildly different. It worked brilliantly. Whatever we needed to do, we could do. We accomplished a great deal in our life. Besides the end, we bought and sold 40 properties. We lived beautifully and exquisitely. We had a home right on the Hudson River for about 10 years also.
Uh,
And we traveled around the world and had a good life. And I was allowed to write and to do things. It was wonderful. And then he suddenly, it took me a year and a half to recognize it because I thought he's too brilliant, too smart. I thought, well, we're 80 years old, 80-year-olds start to forget things. But then one day he had forgotten where $50,000 was. I mean, it wasn't lost, but and I thought Bob wouldn't forget $500, let alone 50,000.
Yeah.
And I started paying attention and I realized, hey, and I started studying, reading. I went to the doctors. Yes, he had dementia. And I studied it and studied it and studied it. I tell everybody, be sure to find those videos by that lovely woman, like Tika Snow or something is her name. It's brilliant. Her description of she describes dementia as, she said, think of your life as a tall, skinny bookcase, and all full of books. And suddenly there's a tremor, a slight earthquake. The top shelf, the top two shelves are really messed up. Some fall out. They're all messed up. The middle of the bookcase, they're a little out of order. The bottom of the bookcase, they're barely touched. So that's dementia. The top, you don't know anything current, nothing. The middle is maybe 15 years ago. You've got some memories. Down at the bottom, and I noticed this with taking care of Bob, because for 3 years with my nanny, I have a nanny, the two of us took hands-on care 24/7. And he would be sitting there and I'd say, what are you smiling about? And he'd say, oh, I'm remembering that day that Debbie and Ron came by, and she was wearing that yellow green thing. And I said, you look like a fresh picked banana or something, and blah 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 blah. And he's describing something that happened 35 years ago in detail. I had totally deleted the memory, totally, and he would bring it back and I'd say, right. And we'd laugh about it because you stay in their reality when you're caregiving dementia. You don't bring the music, don't say, no, you're wrong.
Yep.
He'd look at TV and say, is she the president? And I'd say, oh, no, babe, we didn't elect her. That's good because I think I won't say what he said. And I'd say, right.
You're 89 years old. You look great, sound great.
I feel great.
Like me, I shaved my head so that I look younger.
Yeah.
I still have a gray beard, but
somebody gave me a plaque said, grass doesn't grow on a busy street.
My father used to say that all the time. Oh my gosh, I thought he was the only one.
No, wow. I feel fine. I am healthy and happy.
Debbie, do you have any questions off the top of your head for our guest?
Well, I'm curious. I see a bunch of books behind you, and you mentioned writing. So where did writing come into all of that?
Well, Debbie, when I came to New York, I got my first job, the one where I was living on slave wages, taking home $200 a month after taxes. I was a copywriter. And then it was 13 years later, was in the corner office as a madman, a writer, creative director of major advertising agencies. So I was a writer. I earned my living as a writer. And I went through the fantasy of maybe I should just lock myself in a garret with a bottle of scotch and become Ernest Hemingway. But I had a wife, I had children, I had obligations. I thought, no, I've got to work for a living. And I was good at it. And I did very, very well.
Are you one of the few authors that actually makes money writing books?
No, you don't make any money writing books unless you're very well known. You're a Jim Patterson who doesn't write his books. He has eight writers who write them. He writes an outline and gives them to them, or you look unto like Jack Canfield's Sweet Man, who wrote Chicken Soup for the Soul. And then all the variations of it, and they sold 600 million books.
Wow. How did you make a living? You said you were making a living writing.
Advertising. I was in 1968. I was earning $80,000 a year.
Wow, that's a lot of money in
that was a lot of money, and I laughed. Back when I was taking home $200 a month, I was so excited about working. Work is more fun than fun. That I went to work at least an hour early every morning. And I laughed, cut to 12, 15 years later, and I'm earning $150,000 a year in a corner office. And I was going to work an hour to an hour and a half early. That's built into me. This is my schedule. Every line every line of the day, and I live up to it. And I mean, and it's a very busy schedule. I'm booked today. I end up the day at 6 o'clock at the church. I'm on the board. I'm a rabbi friend calls me a collapsed Catholic because I'm an elder in a Presbyterian church and help direct the church and sing in the choir. So I have a
And you
board
actually
meeting of the
thought,
church.
and you actually thought our interview was 3 hours earlier because you're on Eastern time.
Yes, I know.
Pacific.
It doesn't
And you
matter.
thought, that's okay. I can
I just
cancel
had one
whatever
at
I got.
3 o'clock. I had another video cast at 3 o'clock.
Mm.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
So
hey,
you made all this money advertising, and then you decided
real
to
estate
go buy an inn in upstate New York.
yeah, well, because we were
What
living
provoked
there. We
that?
were living up here. We
Makes
had a
sense.
weekend house up here, and I found this abandoned English manor house full of raccoon droppings and boarded up and no functioning in anything. And I thought, gosh, isn't that pretty? I didn't grow up with that in Coral Gables, Florida, and fell in love with the property and bought it. And my partner said, okay, we'll buy the damn thing. What are you going to do with it? I said, well, you wanted to start a restaurant. Give me a weekend to think about it. And I came back with Troutbeck, the executive retreat in Dutchess County, and I marketed it that way, and it became very successful. And I sold it in 2016 for enough zeros that Jim doesn't have to work.
How much did you have to invest in it to get it in shape?
Oh, everything we had and didn't have. I'd say, counting the purchase of it, which was almost nothing. I mean, like $340,000. Plus, Bob said, how much land is there? And I said, well, we can buy it with 25 acres. He said, how much is there altogether? I said, there's 442 acres. He said, can we
Wow.
afford it? And I said, no. And he said, will you figure out a way to do it? This was part of our partnership. That was my problem. And I said, why? And he said, I'll build a private residential community. I said, okay. So we did. I bought the whole 442 acres. We built a private residential community.
Wow.
We did the inn, and I sold the inn and then sold it to the same buyers 2 years later, sold the community.
You're a regular Donald Trump in the real estate business.
I'm not at all nice and sweet and gentle.
So what life lessons have you learned, in your journey? Gosh, 89. When I grow up, I want to be just like you. You have a lot
Good.
of energy.
Good. I hope you are. I have a hell of a good time, Dave. I really do. I never wake up depressed. My father died. My father was district attorney of the city of Miami, and he died suddenly in 1 week at age 47. And I had a very smart mother, and she raised me with couple of really good things. One was, every morning of your life, you have to confront your biggest critic, your biggest enemy. It's that person in your bathroom mirror. And you can either look at them and go,
Right.
good God, another day, or smile bravely and cheerfully and say, good God, another day. And I know it sounds a little corny, but I basically do that. And I do it, and I say to myself, in terms of eternity, isn't it amazing that I'm given the opportunity to get up every day and see, hear, taste, touch, speak,
Yeah.
share, love? Hey, that's a miracle.
Better
That's
than the alternatives. Yeah.
terrific. That's terrific. And I don't want to spend it, as so many friends do in their 80s, retreating from life and
Yeah.
living isolation. I say, get off your ass, get out there and do something.
Well, you've
Go take
motivated me
painting lessons,
already.
learn Spanish, start cooking classes, do something, but be involved. Go to
There was an
church
evangelist I heard. He said,
a
when
little
you wake
bit.
up in the morning, I used to say, good Lord, it's morning. Now I say, good morning, Lord.
Good. That's fine. I also am a great believer. It happened to me recently. I was driving across New Mexico and I was running out of gas, which scared the hell out of me because nobody knew where I was. And you're out there in the middle of absolute nothing. I'd never been in the state. And I stopped and waved my arm, and somebody stopped, a young man, his wife, he's in Civ, he's a military kid. And he said, just follow me, sir. And they led me off the highway, way off, we found an RV town with a gas station and got that taken care of. And I thought, what to say to these kids? So I got a copy of my book, Embrace Your Age, because they were going to see her newly widowed father. I said it's a very
Which
good book for
I'm going to
him.
buy that book, by the way.
It's
Sounds
a
like
good book. It's a good book. Every chapter asks a question. And I said to the kids, I said, you don't know this. They're looking at me like, who is this person? I said, but God has a big book, or maybe it's a big file, a Word file in a giant computer, but I think he has a big book full of the names of all the people in the world who go through life and they see somebody who's hungry or thirsty or hurt or anxious, and they stop and put their hand out and say, can I help? Expecting nothing in return. I said, that's the biggest gift you can give. And if you can do that every day, just to one person, it's amazing how you get out of it. Besides that, I was raised with the golden rule, which I liked the thought, but I didn't like the language as a writer. So I rewrote it for myself and my children, and they used it to raise my 4 millennial grandsons,
Hmm.
which is you get what you give. I said, so if you give a sympathetic ear, a generous heart, a loving smile, a people, you get it back. If all you do is bitch, moan, complain, demand, criticize, that comes back and
Thank
bites you
God.
somewhere behind you below your belt buckle. It's give good, get good. It's not that hard. And you can do it on a small scale. Help to smile at the lady who's packing your groceries and say, aren't you nice putting all the frozen goods in one bag? She will smile back at you. And what's more, she'll turn to the next person and say, may I help you?
Have
It,
you got any more caregiver questions for our guests?
yeah, I'm sorry. That's not caregiving as much as I care about people, and which is part of caregiving, I think.
It is. It is. You got a great attitude. Every caregiver needs attitude like that because they get depressed. They go through the grief process. You didn't
It's
sign up for
it's
this.
it's
Bitter.
pain. I've never felt such pain or worked so hard in my life. And we tried to keep it funny. Now and then Bob would snap to reality and say, I can't do this. And he suddenly realized he was really very sick. He was in a wheelchair and he said, I can't do this anymore. Just kill me right now. And I said, oh, Bob, I'm so busy this week. How about next Tuesday at 3 o'clock? And he'd laugh and say, good God, you can't even kill yourself in this stupid house. And I knew that he would forget the conversation 1 minute later.
Is he still alive or
No,
no?
no, he died 3 years ago. And I step out of the
COVID,
pool.
did COVID have any,
I have
did
a
COVID
pool in
have
my
anything to
house.
do with it?
What?
Did COVID have anything to do with it or no? COVID.
Did, no, he while he was in dementia, he went into dialysis. So
Hmm.
we were doing that at the same time, dialysis and dementia. And so basically his kidneys failed would be the official cause of death. But of course, with dementia, you're not fighting back. You have no mindset to say, I'm not going to accept this. I'm going to be well, you know.
You bring up an interesting point, James. Is the older we get, sometimes the quality of life really goes downhill. Like my wife, for example, had a stroke 28 years ago. She's been living in this broken body. She's great. She has a great attitude. She's an encouragement to everyone who meets her. But she lost her speech, paralyzed on one side, and now she's got an issue with her bowels. She doesn't want to see a doctor anymore. Doesn't want to go in a nursing home or anything like that. She just says, "Let nature take its course." How do you feel about people who have the advanced directives now? DNR, don't put any ventilation tubes or feeding tubes or paddles or blood transfusions. What's your opinion on all that?
Well, there's a wonderful book called Being Mortal that I think all doctors should read because basically it's saying if you know that no matter what you can do medically, you are not going to cure them and they are going to be in pain, then choose the best palliative care possible so that they can be as comfortable and happy as possible. If I know I don't like pain, and I had bladder cancer and I had rotator cuff and things like that, and I had a bad surgery in Mexico. That was bad. But I got over those things. But if I had something I was going to be in pain all the time, I'd say to the doctors, if you can cut me open and fix it so I can go back to being good old surly, funny Jim, whether I feel like writing books or not, fine. But if you can't, then can I just have enough time to write some love letters to the people that I really love, or write some letters that I think, by the way, I still think that you're a because you always were one, and have time with my children and time to say goodbye and farewell and check out.
It
I
says
mean,
about pain.
I'm a great believer in euthanasia, actually. I
Okay.
think that there's a time when that is going to become the common practice.
Well, like your partner wanted to, I mean, I don't think he was having a good time, but he didn't know he was in heaven.
But he didn't know it. Dementia, they don't know it. He'd say, there's nothing wrong with me. It's just you and the stare. That's the nanny. As we were feeding him or changing his pants, I'd say, I know we're just a pain in the neck, babe, but let's go ahead and
But
do
at
it.
89, do you have aches and pains, that maybe two or
No,
three pain level?
no, I don't.
Wow, you're blessed.
I don't. I
Debbie,
don't.
what
I
do you
think,
have for this
I mean,
Superman?
maybe that's, thank you,
It's
Jesus.
unusual.
Maybe I'm just fortunate I don't have that kind of DNA that's going to take me out. Although all of the Flaherty men died before 65, all of them.
Yeah, but I mean, can you overdo it? Like if you don't run or anything, right?
I'm very, no, I am very careful. I
But there's
embrace my
things you can
age.
do that would make you hurt the next day, right?
Of course, I acknowledge my age. I'm not a big walker. I get in my pool and do 30 minutes of serious exercise every morning. Serious exercise, don't swim laps. Do exercises with
Yeah,
weights and things in the deep end.
isometrics or whatever.
And that's it for the day. The rest of the day, I'm seated at a computer. I try to walk no farther than from here to the kitchen, and I
God
get
bless
from
you.
this into an air conditioned or a heated car and then go places. I do what I know is right for me, and I eat very carefully. I have two meals a day, all fruit in the morning. Then I have dinner around 4 o'clock. Today I'm putting it off till 4:30, so we have time together.
That's great advice for caregivers. Just do everything he said. Debbie, you
Yeah.
got any more questions?
I'm still curious about the books. So
Okay.
there was one about aging. What else are you writing or have you written?
Well, the first two books, the ones on the bottom, were both novels, fiction novels, romance, sex, international travel, Broadway. They're fun, and I would love to have them turn into TV series or a film. I need an agent. I've written a TV series, by the way, an original TV series, which I have, and I also have a screenplay,
Wow.
which are separate. Then the top two books were the nonfiction based on aging cheerfully and productively. The newest one coming out is called Loving Longevity: How to Make Your Next Years Your Best Years.
What's that one? I'm trying to read it. Dear God,
It,
friends.
it says "Dear Old Friends" is the
Dear old
first book. But the more meaningful than that is "Embrace Your Age," which just came out about a year ago.
friend.
Um,
Check it out.
and I do some public speaking and I run workshops. You would really both love this modern elder academy. You would love the brilliance behind the thinking. If you would write them and put on it's free mailing list. Their workshops aren't free, but they are brilliant. I just went to one last month with on the dais were Liz Gilbert, who wrote Eat, Pray,
Uh-huh.
Love, and with her was Tara Trent, this black woman who is just to die for. I
How do
mean,
we find them?
what?
How do we find them?
modernelderacademy.com. If you look that up and write them and say, put me on the list for the daily blog, it's called Wisdom Well. And then they have free monthly webinars also. That's all free. Then you get a list of the workshops, and you may find a workshop that you can't turn down. And they have two campuses, one in the Baja on the Mexican side, about an
Oh,
hour outside of Cabo, and the other new one is right outside of Santa Fe. I've been 3 times to the Baja, and I just went to Santa Fe.
well, I love wisdom. One of my last book was Secrets from the Hammock, Uncommon Wisdom for Uncommon Times.
Great.
So I'll be looking into that as well. Thank you. You're just a wealth of information. And I'm just so inspired by you. Even as a young boy, I would always find older people and glean. Say, what do I need to know?
Dave, my whole life, I had friends 20 to 50 years older.
Mhm.
That was where Dear Old Friends came from. That was a love letter I wrote to my old friends when I was about 42. And I found it in the files about 4 years ago, and I brought it up to date and published it because it was my great affection for people who directed me, who said, no, don't do that. Turn left, turn right, do that, and I said, yeah, right, sir. I paid attention, and now I find myself, I'm the old friend to so many younger people that
Yeah.
say, Jim, tell me what I should do.
We all have people above us that we can glean from, and we all have people below us that we need to pour into.
By the way, there was a book I meant to have it today, and I don't know what the hell I did with it. It was what
Not one of your books.
I will write. No, it was a very helpful book with dementia. I will send you. I'll find the exact title of it or make a copy of it and send it to you because it was very worthwhile. It was what to say or do if you have somebody in a memory care facility, but it was written not medically. It was written from a very humanistic style, and I thought it was an excellent book. It was very helpful.
When you find it, text me. Debbie, I remember what I was going to ask you.
I think that's important.
I was going to say, Debbie, corruption seems to be not starting in Congress or even the presidency. It starts at the city council meetings or the town hall meetings, board members, or the school board members. That's where it starts, isn't it?
It is, and that's where if you can get good people there, those are the people who move up, and those are the people who communicate with the people who are higher up. Right. So if you can choose people with integrity at the local level, we'll have better.
And who's the guy that says all politics is local politics, right?
Yeah, that's right.
One last question: what do you do, for relaxation? What are your hobbies and interests that you just love? I know writing is one of them, right?
I think part of life, especially with age, again, acknowledging my age, I'm 89 and I lived in Manhattan for years, and you didn't have to read New Yorker or New York Magazine to find out the best play, the best restaurants, the best anything, best book. You could just ask Jim because Jim knew everything, and Jim knows nothing now. I've been to 2 plays in the last 3 years. I live in the country, and I go to church on Sunday and sing in the choir, and I help. I have lots of friends here, and I have a very eclectic, only 7 of us or 8 of us for Thanksgiving, a rabbi and his wife, a very, very, very wealthy couple about age 50 that I know who live in Millbrook, which is a moneyed town next to Armenia. Who are terrific people, a lot of fun, and one of my best old girlfriends, who was also a writer, creative director, who's in her 83 now, and very hip and very funny, so I'm not bored. I did so much travel in my 60s and 70s. I mean, we really went around the world, basically. I've not been every place in the world, but I certainly did. At one point, we'd sold something. We had a piece of money, and I said, "I'm spending it." And Bob said, "What are you?" I said, "You've lived all over the world." He'd lived in Mexico City, Rio, Milan, Brussels, Hong Kong, Buenos Aires, all penthouses and all that stuff. I said, "I don't know Southeast Asia." We went to Southeast Asia for 8 weeks. Did that kind of trip. I lived in South America for 4 years, so I know all of South and Central America. I've been to Eastern Europe. One of my daughters lives in England, has for 35 years.
We're blessed.
I know all of England and Ireland and France and Spain and all that, and I'm still fluent in Spanish. So,
the retirement advisors, they say, your early years are your go-go years. You're going everywhere. And then when you get, maybe in your 70s, it's your slow go years, because you're physically limited. And then when you're 80s and 90s, you're no go. But I don't even know if you're in the slow
No,
go, you're still
no,
kind of
and
going.
I still could, but to tell the truth, I don't need like last month I was in Santa Fe, which is a pain in the ass. It's 2 flights to get out there, and then at one point because I went to visit an old dying friend, and then I drove across New Mexico by myself, and last uh May or June I went out and I was teaching a workshop in the Baja, and I went out and I visited friends, and I had 11 flights in 19 days. And people say, "How do you do that?"
That
I
sounds
said,
like go to me.
I use a wheelchair in airports
Yes.
because I can't walk that far, and I don't fly coach. I said, so I'm fine. I can
Don't
still
like what?
travel anymore.
What
What?
don't you like? You don't like what?
I don't fly coach.
Oh, fly coach.
I just won't fly.
I don't blame
I
you.
haven't flown. We believed in air travel. My father's, when I was 8, my father said, I want us all to go to Colorado. He was from Colorado, mother from Illinois. And it took us 3 days to fly from Miami to Denver in 1943. That was my first flight. So I've been flying for 81 years.
Wow.
That's
So
enough.
yeah, it's enough.
All
I,
right.
but
This,
as you get older, cruises are nice. They do
yes,
make
they
it
Mhm.
are. We've
very
gone on many,
easy.
many cruises.
It's
In fact, we're
easy.
supposed to be in Greece right now, but because of Charlene's fall and her surgery, we had to cancel it. Fortunately,
Oh,
I had
I'm
insurance.
so sorry about your wife. That's very tough. God
You
damn
know,
it, that's
she's in
hard.
good spirits. I mean, she's
Bless her
acting
heart.
better than anyone would act in those situations.
Bless her heart. That's terrific.
Yeah.
It's
It really is.
amazing. Hmm.
It really is.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. If
I'm
somebody wanted to get a hold of you or invite you somewhere to speak, where?
absolutely. Be on my website, which is my name, James, initial B like boy, Flaherty, FLAHERTY.com. They can find out about me. There's a telephone number, there's an email, there's everything on that. Okay.
I'm going to
And
keep in touch, James.
I would like that, and I would love to come back with you and Debbie at any time. Really.
Great.
That would
Debbie,
be fun.
how can
Okay.
someone get a hold of you, Debbie? And why don't you just briefly tell people what you do about corruption and politics and being a
Good.
former mayor of
Yeah. Well, I volunteered to
the
serve my community thinking that's what I was going to do about 20 years ago, and thought I could just come in and help run the place better. And it turned out I couldn't really run it better because there was so much corruption.
Ah,
So started working on getting rid of some of that, and then started writing books about it, and now teach people how to spot it and how to fix it, because you can fix it. It's an
yeah.
effort, but you can fix it. People have done it.
Great.
So the fun book, or I guess the sort of sleazy book, the book with all the stuff in it, is The Happiest Corruption, Sleaze, Lies, and Suicide in a California Beach Town, and that's available on Amazon. And then I have a bunch of books that are the positive side of it, how to
I
fix it.
like that. So I can find it under your name, under Debbie.
Debbie Peterson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
On Amazon. I call it my Integrity 101 series.
Okay. Good. I like that. Yeah. And of course, we live in the two states that are the
and
most taxed and sometimes
most
the most
corrupt.
complex. People said, Jim, how did you do with the election? I said, we really studied who was running for Senate and for Congress and for our local elections, because in New York, it doesn't matter if Hitler was the head of the Democratic Party, New York embraces that.
Yeah.
So your presidential vote doesn't really count in New York State. It's not a swing state.
I just can't believe how fast our time has gone today. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Well,
And
I feel sorry that I didn't make it more serious.
oh no,
Should
it's
we be
perfect.
sadder? I mean,
We don't want to bore our caregivers. It was perfect.
good. They shouldn't be. They
Our
shouldn't be. I
podcast is
mean,
not boring.
I was so grateful that I had the mental and physical health to do it, because
Amen.
it took. And my doctor said, "I'm worried about you, Jim, because caregivers die quicker than patients with dementia."
Right.
And for a while I had moved my bed in next to his. So he said, "No, no, no, no. You've got to. You can't do that. You've got to take care of yourself too." It's tough.
Well, just a reminder, all our live shows become recorded pod and video casts on our platforms. Also, my membership website, caregiverdave.com, is a free membership support community. Lots of free gifts, resources, including a free initial coaching session to help you not just survive caregiving, but to thrive. Right. And please check the like or follow button or the subscribe button, whatever platform you're watching us on, helps us reach even more caregivers by improving those algorithms. So again, thank you to my guests, to Debbie, my co-host, all the listeners out there tuning in each and every week, making us the #1 caregiver podcast on the internet. Until next week, same time, same channel. May God richly bless you all.
Okay.
Bye.
Anytime we suffer loss, we grieve. And a lot of people don't realize what even the grief process is. But it could be 5 to 7 steps ranging from denial, I don't believe this is happening, anger, oh my gosh, I'm so upset this is happening, to a form of bargaining, how can I get out of this, to depression, which is a very serious thing because that often leads to suicide. And then finally, after you realize you have no more control over your situation, and you're totally okay with the new normal that it brings, that wonderful, wonderful place called acceptance.
Sometimes it feels like the sun will never rise, like the birds will never sing again.